questions at any point. If you do not want to be recorded for your questions, please feel free to type them in chat and someone else will read it out for you. Thank you.
All right, so on the website, I posted the handout, which you're welcome to use, or you can just follow along. Only one person requested a kit. Beatrice, are you there? I'm looking to see. I don't see her yet. Hopefully she joins. If you would like a kit later on to try, I would be happy to mail them out. The kits that I was sending were a little drawing, a bit of, or a drawing that already has the sizing on it, but it appears that they are now sticking to the paper. Well, that's like. And a couple of pieces of gold and a little pouch with the ingredients for the gesso, for the size. If you would like, I would be happy to send those. So,
should we just email you if we'd like to request a kit?
Yeah, if you just send me an email, I will be happy to send that to you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Gilding is addictive. Once you start, you will not want to stop. It is way too much fun. You will gild everything, including your dogs, cats, house, legs, whatever. Be careful not to do this with the air conditioning blowing or a fan. It's bad. It is very simple. The process is extremely simple. That does not mean it's easy. So to kind of follow the handout, so there are 3 ways to get gold on your paper or parchment or whatever you're using. The first, the oldest, is shell gold. So called because it was kept in a shell, and it's basically finely ground up gold mixed with gum arabic to make an ink or a gouache paint. And it is always kind of a sparkly finish, just because all the little bits of gold are aligning differently, so it's going to be kind of sparkly. So the second way is called flat gilding, and the third way is called raised gilding. Now, both of the gildings use a gold leaf on top of something called a mordant. A mordant is something that sticks. So, flat gilding, let me switch to this. Oh, let's see if this will show. No, let's do this right. Flat gilding is never going to be all that bright and shiny. So, from that angle, it looks pretty shiny, but you can see that it's not, got a little bit of a matte finish. So this sizing is basically something sticky. Raised gilding gets a lot shinier because the mordant that is used has something to create body. So you see how that's almost like a mirror finish. Much brighter and shinier. It is also much more difficult. Has several additional steps. I'm still working on it. There are a number of professional modern recipes, things that you can use for raised gilding. Flat gilding, pretty simple. The easiest, if you just want to do it that way, is, well, it's backwards, isn't it? Jerry Tresser's Gold Size. You can get this from Jerry Tresser, or you can get this from John Neal Books, or if you are Trimaris Scribe, see Jeanette, she will give you some. It's good. I like it. It's easy. My bottle is old enough that it's kind of gotten gunky. I like the period gesso better, or sizing better. So some of the resources that I mentioned there on the handout. Mappe Clavicula looks like this. You can get it and download it, or you can buy it. This was 9th century. He gives a number of recipes for gold, primarily for gold paint, but he does mention gold leaf over egg white glare. One of these, I was just looking through this again, you gotta love these things. Number 50, gold colored writing on parchment, marble, and glass so that it seems to be made of gold. Mix gold with verdigris, grind it and smear it on, or grind quicksilver with a woman's feces and smear it on. A recipe I'm not going to try. So Mapia Clavicula is a good one. On Diverse Arts by Theophilus is another good example. It's a little bit later, 12th century. Also talks about how to make gold leaf. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole of art sci and document stuff, you definitely want a copy of Diverse Arts. The third classic that anybody down the rabbit hole has is Cimini's Il Libro dell'Arte, that also talks about raised gilding. If you want a simplified version, Kathleen Whitley, the light on that, The Gilded Page covers all of it and has recipes and examples. This is like the perfect starter book. I really like that book.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you have those on your handout? And where can
Yes.
I find your handout?
They're on the handout, and I will put again on this chat. Let me see.
Thank you very, very much. I've been looking for information on raised gilding. So.
Oh yeah, this book is awesome. Even talks about
Thank
one
you.
with Elmer's glue. It didn't work. So I've got it here in the chat. This has all the 2 classes, so it's got some other stuff too, but that handout is in there. So yeah, that's an excellent, excellent book for raised gilding. And if you want to talk raised gilding, I'll give you all what I know too, but we'll do that later. All right. Get these out of the way. All right, so flat gilding. I use Maeva Eriksdotter's, although she's now somebody else. Let's see. Let me show you the website. Come back here. All right. So this was Maeva Eriksdotter, who is now Maken van der Alst. This is her website, which is on the handout. She gives you the recipe that I'm using, the steps step by step. She also talks about raised gilding in here. She is where I have learned all of this useful stuff. And the same recipe that she uses is in the Kathleen Whitley book, but uses a whole lot more water, therefore does not work in Florida. So the process is fairly simple. I'm going to try to switch back and forth between these. Doing some research, there are other ways of flat gilding. One is gum ammoniac, which are little stones that you soften in water and you melt, and I couldn't get it to work. Garlic juice is also mentioned. Besides smelling up your house unbelievably, the garlic never really dries completely, so it wasn't really used in books because you close the book and it squishes through and glues your pages together. Bad thing. It was used some on panel painting. I've tried it. It sticks beautifully, but it just doesn't dry, so you'd have to like varnish over it or something. You can also use glaire. So you take egg white, you beat it, you let it sit, 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 and then you pour the liquid out of the bottom and keep it, and you throw away the fluffy stuff on top. I couldn't get it to work either. This works most of the time. So the starting element in this is gum arabic. So this is sap from the acacia tree. Let me switch over to the little camera. And it comes in giant rock form. If you buy it from like Natural Pigments, you get a nice jar of Pretty Little Pebbles. For about a quarter the cost, I got this in giant chunks from a incense on Etsy or something, and then just broke it into little chunks. We want the powdered version. You can use it the other way. This is easier to measure with, so I just get it from Natural Pigments. You can get little jars, big jars. So I do kind of a double boiler technique. So I take 2 bowls, one that I'm going to mix in and one that I'm going to use for warm water. So you take 1 part. So I'm using 1/8 of a teaspoon, and that will last quite a while. Whoops, it's got lumps in it. So I'm trying to get 1/8 of a teaspoon without lumps. Come on. And I'm putting it in my little bowl. The second reactive ingredient is sugar. So this is what's going to turn sticky. It's what's going to stick to the page. It's what's used in gouache paint. Gouache is gum arabic liquid and pigment. So you can take those rocks, put them in a jar, let them sit for ages, pour off the liquid, and you have gum arabic, just like Winsor Newton makes. Put it in an old Winsor Newton bottle. You can see over time it's got some funky stuff in the bottom. Perfectly fine. Just strain it out, pour it in a new bottle, you're good to go. The next ingredient is sugar. Now, I should probably use a more period version of sugar. I use Domino's superfine crystals. I also have castor sugar, same stuff. I've tried a more period unbleached, unprocessed sugar, but it's all now currently stuck together in one large lump and will have to be ground, and I'm not in the mood to do that. So I'm going to add the same amount of sugar to my bowl. I'm going to add a tiny, tiny pinch of color, because otherwise I won't be able to see this stuff because it'll be clear. Red is probably the most common. They also used yellow, and I think somewhere I saw blue, but that's not very common. So I really only need, stuff's gotten humid. Tiny, 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 tiny bit. Now I've put 1 part gum arabic, 1 part sugar. Now the original recipe called for 4 parts of water. That will never work in Florida. We use 2 parts, and that's usually good. So I've got tap water. Distilled water might be better, but I've never had any problems with Florida tap water. So I'm going to stir this up. Now I keep the bottom bowl with hot water just because over time, well, sugar dissolves faster in hot. The water that I used in it is also warm, not boiling. So we sit here and stir this up for a while. I usually let this sit in the kitchen for, I don't know, an hour. Go back and stir it periodically, try to get the color. It will eventually thin out. I have another bowl around here somewhere. Where did I put the other bowl? There's one bowl. Somewhere in all of this, I have lost a bowl that I made. There it is, under the box. So this is without color, and I let it sit about an hour ago. So with color, eventually it will look like that. From here, I pour it into a bottle and I strain it through a nylon stocking. When you go to try on shoes at the store, you just grab the nylon stocking that they give you and off you go. So just since nobody's actually doing it with me, I'll just kind of move a little faster here.
Question.
Yes.
Can you use hot water in your mix to make it go quicker?
Yeah, I microwaved this water about 10 minutes ago for about a minute and a half. So it's still very warm. It does go a little faster. For some reason, I just haven't tried it with boiling water because I don't want any kind of chemical reaction, but hot water. And I use hotter water underneath than I mix in for some reason. It probably would work fine either way. So my pigment is not behaving at the moment. It's kind of sitting there in little lumps. I'm not thrilled with that, but it'll work. I have had I'm sorry?
Sorry, another quick question. Can you use honey as the sugar?
I will get to that in a minute. Okay?
Thank you.
I won't forget because there's a point to that. So I tend to carry around with me when I'm going places little containers that have equal mixtures or equal quantities of the ingredients so I can quick make a batch if I need to. Sometimes when I make a batch, it doesn't play nice. You just put it to the side and ignore it for a week or a month or 6. And then I usually dump them together. So this right here has a batch that I made last year for coronation and some that was probably 6 months older than that. And you can see it's getting kind of funky. There's a wad of something in the middle there. But it keeps working. So what I'm going to do is just strain this. And I tend to add. Now this is 2 batches or more, I don't know. And once it starts working, it is a joy to behold. So you just pour it in. So I would do that with my little bowl full. I'm going to put a glove on because I do not want my hands all sticky. And then just squeeze. And you have nice clear stuff. You can use it with the funky stuff inside of it. Doesn't do any harm at all. Just kind of looks unappealing. So this is size. The difference between size and gesso is gesso has chalk or slaked plaster or some other bodybuilder to raise up your gold. So gesso, that had a tablet in it that I've used, is usually a whiter. So if you're looking at a manuscript, if it's a darker color, it's probably flat gilding. If it's more of a light pink or light yellow, it's probably raised. Now, raised gilding is kind of a misnomer. I always assumed that raised gilding was raised, that you put, several layers on your paper and so that you had this arched effect. I looked at a couple of manuscripts, one in London and one in Venice, and what actually happens is the parchment buckles. So when you look at the back side, none of these did it very well, it's actually the parchment has bowed, so you don't have a really thick layer of gesso on top of it because that would just crack. And we don't really need to worry about that with flat gilding because you're not going to get very raised up. So once we've made our size, we're going to apply it to our drawing. So I'm going to re-angle the camera. Okay, I don't know if that's very clear. Okay. All right, so I usually just play with little outlines. You want a brush that is going to be a dedicated size brush because getting the gum arabic out of this thing is a pain in the neck. It really takes some serious cleaning, and then I would never use it for paint. So this is my size brush. I can tell because it's got the white bristles with the pink tip from all the sides. You can also apply this with a quill, and one of these should work. No. Yes. Okay, so I'll show you a quill in a second. When you paint the gesso on, you're not painting it like you would paint paint. You're more pulling it. So you would start with like a dab. Nice big dab there. It's got a bubble, bad thing, I'll get it in a minute. And you're just going to tease it. So what you want is the hydrophilic tendencies, or the hydroscopic, there we go, hydroscopic tendencies to create a bubble. Because the smoother the outline, the better. If you've got imperfections in the mordant, the gold is going to show them up. So you just kind of touch down into where you already have size and then pull. If you're starting a new section, you want to like dab it in the middle and then kind of tease it to the edges. You don't want a really thick coat. And if you've got any bubbles like that one right there that I'm chasing around, I can't seem to get it out. There are 2 tricks. One is a pin or needle, and the other one is earwax. I generally go with the pin or needle, but I need stronger glasses for this. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of tease, there we go, bubble gone. Because that bubble will show up in the gold. You can also use a quill Generally, for writing, a quill is cut on the top. When you're using it for sizing, it's easier if it's cut on the bottom. And then you do pretty much the same thing. You tap down, give it a dot or two, and then you tease it to the edges. You want to make sure you go on the edges, give it a nice clear edge, otherwise your gold gets kind of raggedy at the edges. It is better to do 2 or 3 very thin coats than one really thick coat. Now, the absolute hardest part about all of this is waiting. You have to be patient. So while this is kind of drying, I did these about an hour ago. So this is 2 coats, this is 1 coat, so you can see the difference. So if your size is not behaving, which you will find out when you try it, so it's a good idea when you make a batch of size, go ahead and do a sample piece just to see if it's going to cooperate. If it's not, let it sit. If you have to use it tomorrow, let it sit in an open container overnight. If you have to use it now, you can add a little more sugar or a little more gum arabic or honey. Now, there is an SCA legend, I suppose, about honey on scrolls. Here in Florida, we have those little baby ants. And I've heard tell that the ants have crawled into the frames around scrolls and eaten all of the gold and size off scrolls. Has not happened to me, but I've heard it. So you can add a little bit of honey to it at the risk of the ants eating your gold. I don't know. You can also use honey instead of sugar. You might have to adjust the proportions a little bit. The point of the sugar is it is hydrophilic. It loves water. So the goal is for these to get dry. Now, if I touch that, it's a tiny sticky. That one's still a tiny bit sticky. Not too bad though. And then wait some more. I have had pieces that I put the sizing on and 6 months later gilded them and they were fine, as long as they didn't get stuck to something else. I have had pieces where I put too thick a coat and it didn't dry completely, and when I put the gold down, it squished. It was not pretty. Bad thing. So you really, really have to let it dry. That's like the hardest part. So once you let it dry, you're going to apply your gold. So let me talk about gold a minute. You can get artificial gold at Joann's. I have tried it on occasion. I have a packet of it somewhere that I have no idea where it disappeared to because I don't like it. It's bad. It's icky. It's too thick. It doesn't leave nice edges. It just, yeah. The best thing to get is actual gold leaf. Now there's 2 kinds of gold leaf. This is called patent gold leaf because the gold is stuck to a backing sheet. This is 23 karat gold leaf, 25 sheets, $36-ish, somewhere. Doing flat gilding, you're only really going to use 1 layer at a time. This will last quite a while. If you're doing raised gilding and sometimes you put 2 or 3 layers of gold on, it goes through a lot faster, but it's not bad. I tried this, Mistress Genevieve used this at the class she taught on making powdered gold. It's edible from Amazon and it's pretty cheap. I think it was less than $20 for 25, 50 sheets. This is loose gold. which is a lot harder to work with. This stuff is so thin, oops,
A tip for the
that
using
it will
that.
stick to your finger. Sorry? Did someone have a question? Nope. Okay. So it gets everywhere. So using patent gold leaf on my little scrap pile, keep all your pieces. You're gonna need them. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So I'm going to use just my regular stuff because I love it. So I'm going to take a piece. I'm not going to go the whole thing down because that would be wasteful. So I'm going to cut with my, I only use this for gold so it doesn't have stuff on it sticker, or scissors. I'm going to cut a piece just about the size I need. The thing about gold leaf, real gold leaf, is it loves itself. So if I mess up and cut too small a piece, I can easily put another piece right on top and the two pieces will kind of meld together. If you're using artificial gold, it will not do that and you'll have this little tiny line. It's obnoxious. Now, I happened to have, a number of years ago, a surgery, and in the hospital they were going to throw out all of the implements. So I ended up somewhere with a pair of little latchable tweezers. Those little guys. Handy tools. So I'm going to grab my little gold by the corner. And with these, it holds on so now I don't have to worry about it too much. The next thing I'm going to do is breathe onto my now mostly, we'll see what happens, dry sizing. You can use all kinds of things. I started out using a toilet paper roll. I've used a straw. When I teach classes, I use the little rolls from doggy potty bags. Yes, they've been through the dishwasher. My favorite tool is a piece of gardening bamboo that I cut and cleaned. Something absorbent is better than something plastic because the more you use it, plastic will get beads of moisture inside, and if the bead of moisture runs down and blops on your size, that is not going to be good. So this tends to absorb a little more. So I'm going to take deep breaths from the bottom of my lungs, getting all the moist air from down there, and I'm going to breathe on it 3 times. Then I'm going to stick my gold and hands off, leave it be. I'm going to do the same thing to the one next to it. And I'm going to just plop that on. Now I can already see this one's going to have an issue right there. Let's see if it'll, a little bit of a dark spot right about there. I'm going to do it on this one here because I know it's not going to work, but that way you can see what happens and how to fix it. And I don't even need to blow on that one because it's not dry at all, but I'll do it anyway. Whoop, that was moving. Okay, so you can see it bled out the side right there. It bled out all the sides. That's fishy. Okay, second hard part, wait. Wait, 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 wait. You've re-moistened it. It's softened. If you rush this, it's gonna mush. So a lot of the time I will do my sizing the night before, Then I'll come in and put all the gold on it, and then I'm going to go off and do something else for a while, and then I'll come back. If you want to, when Starhaven has our art sci thing in July, I'm going to do the same class, but it's broken into 2 pieces. So I can send out packages of stuff. I'll let the gesso dry a little bit longer so it doesn't stick. And that way you can play along if you want to. So then I'm going to lift off the backing paper, and the backing paper should come off pretty easily. It might have little bits left on it. I save those because this one might have an open spot. Yep. So let's get this off of there. Blech. All right, so let's see. Can you see right here? There's a blemish. The size bled through just enough to leave a hole. So because this is real gold and this does not work with the artificial stuff, I blow on it again. And I take my little leftover piece and I stick it right on top. And it sticks. Gold will stick to itself, fake gold will not. Now, some people on one of the threads we were having a conversation about, people asked about the edges, and the edges, part of getting nice, good edges is your size needs to be nice and even around the edges. Another trick that I have found, if I can get this tiny bit of gold off my fingernail, get off, get in. There's my brush. Is sometimes I'll go around the edges. And I'm breathing at an angle so it kind of gets under the edges of the gold. And then I can press it down again. To press it down, we use glassine paper. So you can buy a nice roll of glassine paper. I think it was $16 for a nice big roll on Amazon, the source of everything. Or you can use stamp envelopes from the post office and cut them up. So the first time I burnish just gently with my finger, I'm going to use the glassine paper because I can tell if anything bled through. So you can see where I've got sticky stuff. Oops, I just sliced right through that. That's because the sizing bled through the gold. I just wiped it on there. So if I do this, I can see nothing is bleeding through, nothing is sticking. So I'm in good shape. I'm not even going to mess with that. That was just so you could see the disaster. Then I've got a couple of brushes that never touch paint. This is my mother's watercolor brush from the 70s. And I'm going to brush off the extra gold. Sometimes this one works best. Sometimes this one works best. Kind of depends. Just going to tease. Now that hit friction, so I think that's bleeding through, so I'm going to stop. All right, this one's doing nicely. Make sure I get that edge. If you're using real gold, you want to keep the bits. So here I've got a bunch of little gold bits, and I'm going to put them in my bits jar because I can take this, mix it with salt, stir it around with my finger, grind it, mull it, and turn it into shell gold. So this is real gold. Don't throw it away. Don't lose it. It can be done. I've done that once, and it kind of sort of mostly worked. So I'll pour that in later. So I always work on a piece of white paper. That way I can just get all this stuff into my used up gold jar. I took a class with somebody, I don't remember, years ago on raised gilding. And she called it her bad gold jar because sometimes leaves of loose gold are just horribly monstrous and don't behave themselves at all. And so she would just crumple them up and stick them in there. The next step is going to be burnishing with something harder, which is a good idea to wait until the next day. This is a lipstick, because of the shape, agate burnisher. I used, for the first couple of years I did this, a jewelry burnisher. This one was eBay $3.95. This one was in the $40 range. And I got this beautiful one in Italy in the $50 range. I've seen them up to $60, $70, $80, depending on the size. The pointed one is really nice for going around the edges. And so you're just pressing down, making sure it's nice and stuck. With a lipstick burnisher, I'm just using the flat to press down. It's discoloring and it stuck. I was in a rush, but because it's real gold, let's see if I have another cut piece already. Oh, I'm about to have gold all over my fingers. Gotcha. I'm going to layer it on. Now, flat golding generally doesn't take several layers unless you're bleeding through. Raised gilding will. So we'll just see. Yep, see, I'm bleeding through because it took another piece of gold. But that's okay. That's the joy of real gold. So I will just brush off the excess. Put it over there. Do it again. I'm going to do it very gently now just so that I don't mess stuff up. But like I said, the hardest thing about this is patience. But the glassine paper will stick, and then you know you got to put another layer on before catastrophe happens. Now, when you're doing raised gilding, this is what you're going to use for your final burnishing for the most part. It's going to get you that mirror finish. In flat gilding, bunny fur works the best for me. Silk and cotton balls are also recommended. I find that the silk piece that I have, at least, leaves little lines in it. But if I take the bunny fur or a cotton ball, it's got some imperfections, but it's looking pretty good. This one I can try. You can burn. I've seen some things say you can burnish it instead of brushing off the edges. You can just burnish it. I find that I lose the gold that way, and then if it's bleeding through, then my bunny fur gets sticky, and yeah, I prefer just brushing it off and then coming back to that. So really, that's it. Now you would paint the rest of the design that you're trying to make. So it's simple. You put down a layer of something sticky, you put a piece of gold on top of it, but it's not easy because if you're not patient, you end up with a disaster or at least something not very nice. And the smoother you get it underneath, the better. So it's something that's fun, takes practice. Once you start, you will gild everything you can get your hands on. Any questions? Does that make sense?
No questions. I just wanted to say thank you. I always watch it being done, and it just looks like magic. Thank you.
It does, and you're done, and you're going, "Ooh, that's so pretty," you know, and you know, it's fun. So raised gilding, there's several other things you can try. This is a sample page that I was practicing on. Colner Miniatum, Instacol, there's a water gold size, and Illuminator's bowl. They're all attempts for raised gilding with various degrees of success and shininess. But it's a lot of fun, and it's not that hard. You just kind of have to practice with it, and above all, patience. Anytime I try to rush it is when things go wrong. There is also silver leaf, but it tarnishes. I have tried one artificial silver leaf and was somewhat okay with it. Didn't love it. So I bought white gold, but I haven't tried it yet. Get a little bits up here.
With your size recipe, you mentioned adjusting the water for Trimeris. Is that because of the humidity?
Yes. Yeah, I made a batch one time with the 4 parts water to 1 part gum arabic and sugar each. It didn't, it never dried. And when it did, it just did, it was the worst stuff ever. So I used the 2 parts of water to 1 part each of the other 2 pieces. And it works much better. It's almost always successful, usually a week or 2 later. So sometimes I've gotten it to work that day. Other times it just needs to sit and evaporate a little bit more. I find even just leaving it sitting in a jar for a week or 2, it works better. And then, like I said, the stuff that I've had, some of this is at least 6 months old. Some of this is a year old. Some of this is probably a 1.5 years old. It works beautifully. Because those 2 were pretty effortless. So, it's a lot of fun. And the ingredients, the sugar's not too bad. Gum arabic is not very expensive at all. And you can use, this is alizarin crimson pigment. I've used probably every red that I have in the box up there. It's just whatever I grab.
For coloration, would a drop of red ink work instead of a little bit of the water?
Probably. It's because the red ink is probably colorant and gum arabic and water. That's how you would take your pigment and mix it with gum arabic and water to make the ink. So when you're adding it, you're actually adding pigment. You just want enough color so that you can see where it's thick and thin. So this one's gotten mangled now, but you can see that the color isn't even. And so that tells me I need to put another layer on, and I need, especially where there's not a lot of color, I think I stuck my finger in it. Especially the edges, a lot of times I'll notice that they're much lighter, they dry faster, and I'll notice that they're not as dark, and so I'll put a 3rd layer on, very thin in the middle, but heavier on the edges, just because I want a nice crisp edge. Although the secret to edges is you cover them with ink so that nobody knows whether they're straight or not. So most, let me see, where's my cue? So like this is a piece done in gilding, and then all of the edges have been gone over in red ink. So you can't tell where the gold behaved and where it didn't. You hide your... But then there wasn't that much of an attempt for perfection in the middle ages anyway. So anyway. So any other questions? Yeah, feel free to send me an email and I will send you a little package of stuff to play with.
Hi, could we see your sizing sample card again?
So this one is for raised gilding.
Mm-hmm. That's a really cool idea.
In her book, The Gilded Page, Kathleen had that kind of thing going, so I figured it was a good idea. She shows a variety of is it? Somewhere. Oh, it's the first page. It's the last page. Yeah. Oh well, hers is black and white, but she shows in using the different abilities. So you can tool the gold, which is really cool. You can actually tool this. It doesn't come out as well, but I've found that you can actually press designs in. Works best when it's completely dry. I don't know if you can see that. You can kind of get a design going in it. But with your raised gilding, because it's such a hard underlayer, you can use leather punch tools and actually create designs. It's very period. So, but I have this, and then I was doing, when I was playing with raised gilding using the period size, which turned out to be a royal pain. I have little cards like this, so that I was trying diaper work as well as large areas, details, and then down here I would write with a quill to practice chryssography. The real period size is, yeah, or gesso, I should say, comes out really beautifully, but it's a lot of work burnishing. Show your arms. But this one, I was trying to compare the different modern gessos to see what I wanted to work with, and I still haven't decided. And then I did a year and a half ago, I tried playing with different other sizes. So I had, if I can show it, gum ammoniac and sugar, garlic, glare with sugar, and just plain glare. Obviously that didn't work at all. This stuff has now been sitting here for a year, so it probably is pretty potent. Oh, the glare is still clear. That's pretty impressive. Oh yeah, I think I need to clean out these bottles. Yeah, this is the Jerry Tresser's pink stuff, which I like, except that in the heat, it tends to break down a bit. I suppose I could heat it back up and it would work better. Yeah, I was playing with a variety of different things. But after all the playing around and trying all the different things, some of which didn't work at all, I definitely like the sugar gummy bear book much better. Yeah, this is a sampler I did. I don't know if you can see too well. That's 23 karat patent gold, which worked pretty well. This is the imitation, and you can see where, I don't know if you can see, kind of left the edges loose. This was the double Janini weight gold, which I liked, the white gold, and the loose edible gold. Kind of a little, I don't know if you can see, a little discoloration right there. I don't know if that was in the gold or if that was a reaction to something. But it's fun to play with. So we've got a couple minutes. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.